Welcome into Courtside Seats with Kroger, a Charlotte Hornets podcast. Here he is, Chris Kroger.
All right, we get to talk now to the second head coach in the history of the Greensboro Swarm. He's got a big smile on his face because I think that sounds pretty good to him. Joe Wolf is with us on Courtside Seats. Joe, how you doing?
I am doing fabulously. Thank you. I mean, this is it's been a whirlwind, but it's been fun.
Well, welcome to Charlotte, and I say welcome to Charlotte because you're here for a little while as your transition begins, and it starts really here because you got to get indoctrinated with this coaching staff and terminology more than anything. Basketball is basketball, but you got to learn terminology and the way JB speaks and the coaching staff speaks, and then you're going to be with us through training camp and some of the preseason, and then you'll go start the regular season with Greensboro. But I say starting, welcome to Charlotte for now, and then you can go get familiar with Greensboro.
Well, thank you. Obviously, I have a history here in Charlotte, and I loved my playing days here, so it's great to be back.
It's funny how things go full circle, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, this is full circle, too.
Yeah, and I told you because we've got our open house for our fans, for our season ticket holders who want to come out and see, okay, what's this whole thing going to look like? And people should do that, by the way. We've put down the throwback court, our classic court. And I said, you haven't seen it yet. I said, do you want to go see the court? Because that's the court. It's not the same court, but it's roughly the same, the same court you used to play on.
Right. A lot of good memories, a lot of good wins on that court.
When did this all come together? Was this something in the works for a few weeks or a few months? How long has this whole process taken shape to become the new head coach for the Swarm?
It opened up in the middle of August. I had an interview, and then later on had a second interview, and a couple days after that, they offered me the position, and I readily accepted it.
Yeah, that's pretty quick.
Yeah, it was a quick, and out of the blue, too. It was just like, oh, okay. It was something that wasn't on the radar, and then it became on the radar.
And you were in Wilmington, right? You were coaching at UNCW.
Correct.
What attracted you to this? Just the notion of obviously being home and being tied to a franchise that you used to play with and being connected to the Carolina family, I'm sure, with Mitch and Michael is always important too. But what attracted you to the job?
I think the development aspect of it. It's something where throughout my coaching career, which is going on 18 or 19 years now, at all levels, high school, coach JV, AAU, college, minor leagues, NBA. I think through all of that, something stood out to me now that I'm 53 years old, and it was the fact that when I received the most joy and energy from a day of work, it was the energy that I received when I saw that a player took something to improve himself or his game. And so as you get longer in the tooth, as they say, you start to realize where you're finding happiness, what routines you like better, and where positive energy in your life is coming from. And I think that for the most part, it was the fact that those teaching moments that turned into successful habits for younger players really drove me. And so having coached in the old CBA and the D League and now the G League, having an opportunity here, it excites me, and the whole aspect of seeing a player maybe just coming out of college and getting time on the court in practice, and then getting more time in games and possession by possession getting better. It's something that I really enjoy, and it goes. I coach with Mike Fratello as his assistant coach for the country of Ukraine, and we had a really good run for 3 years there. And one of my former players from the D League, Pujetter, played for us during that, and he and I still keep in touch, and he's still playing. And it's just fun to have seen him grow for the last 11 years professionally, and to know that I had a little bit of that with him, and he still comments and thanks me for that. That's pretty special.
Your relationship with Buzz Peterson, what would you call it? Is you were teammates,
Absolutely.
So beyond that, over the last 30 plus years, how has that relationship grown or developed and taken shape? And how does that, I don't know, tie into, getting a job like this?
Well, we were teammates for 2 years under Coach Smith, so we have a lot of stories.
Yeah.
And those stories are between Buzz and myself, obviously, as any teammates. But, those were the growing years. And Coach Smith was our teacher, and on the court and off the court. And we just, when you go through the Carolina, 4 years at Carolina, there are some instances that really bond you. And whether you see that person on a weekly basis, or you see them once every decade, or you might catch them once after college, there's still a bond there. And so that's I think that's what Buzz and I have had, as with everybody else I played with at Carolina.
Had you come into contact with Mitch other than maybe when you were in school? Because Carolina does as great of a job as any program in any sport of tying the past into the present. It was just Carolina Family Weekend a few weeks ago, an annual tradition unlike any other. But did you have any familiarity or dealings with Mitch, or did you just know that's the great Mitch Kupchak?
So I don't even think Mitch knows this one, but my brother went to Carolina, and he came in the year after Mitch graduated. So Mitch graduated in 76. My brother came in as a freshman in 77. So I come from a big family, 6 brothers and sisters, 7. I'm the 7th, and mom and dad. So when my brother Jeff took his recruiting visit, we went in the old Kingswood Estate, the big family station wagon, and we did, I don't know how many colleges, but one of them was North Carolina.
How far of a drive is it from Sheboygan County, Wisconsin to Chapel Hill?
It's too long for 2 little kids in the back seat for my brother and I. So we get to the Carolina Inn, and Mitch was there, and I'm all of 10 years old in the 5th grade, and I look up and I see this giant man, and I thought my brother was a giant.
Yeah.
And Mitch is just like, whoa. So from that point forward, I've seen and been around Mitch since I was 10 years old. So yeah, it's for whatever reason, we all stayed in basketball, and when you do that, you see each other frequently.
Yeah, I think people of a certain age have an appreciation and understanding because they saw firsthand how good Mitch was at basketball.
Yeah.
People my age and younger, they know of Mitch as like a GM or as an NBA guy, as a talent evaluator. They don't know how Mitch was one of the best college basketball players in the country when he played at Carolina.
Absolutely, yeah. Olympian and everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You were pretty good too, I think, Joe. You ended up having a pretty good run.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed my playing days, and I think I got the most out of my ability. I wish I had played in today's game because obviously with the 3-point shot and more dribble, pass, and shoot mentality, I think I would have done much better than the 2-man game when I played.
Well, we're bearing the lead here because you were great at Carolina. You had a long NBA career. You've had a great coaching resume you've put together over the years. But, there are varying reports that say you may or may not be the greatest high school basketball player in the state of Wisconsin.
Well,
like ever.
Well,
ever.
You've got to know the voters like I did, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, you stuffed the ballot box is what happened?
They got their checks, if you know what I'm saying. No, that was quite an honor. I had a brother that I played with in high school, and we had some very good teams, and I had a good career when I was in high school.
You're from what town? Kohler, Wisconsin, right?
Village of Kohler, yeah.
So that's a really, 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 really small town.
It's a little village of about 2,000 people that we make the plumbing fixtures, KOHLER.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So what level is that? I don't know what you consider that in Wisconsin. Around here, we call that like 1A or 2A or 3A. What did you have? What level of basketball was that when you were playing?
So there was the really big schools. There were the middle schools, the smaller schools, and then Kohler was tiny. So we had A, B, and C. We were in C.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. At that point, and up until a couple of years ago, the graduating class at Kohler, the most people that had ever graduated from a single class at Kohler was like 50, and my graduating class had 52. So,
no joke.
So for a long time, we held the record until this past couple of years.
So what are the odds of, even beyond your specific area, where you're from, in Sheboygan. I've always wanted to, I love just saying Sheboygan, Wisconsin. So from that part of the country, like in that part of your state and schools of that size and areas like that, the odds that it would produce a player that would go on to play more than 10 years in the NBA, like is there any sort of context for that? Like that seems pretty rare, right? That seems one in a million type of shot.
I think it was just lucky to have my mom and dad give me the proper genes and my brothers and sisters to beat me up in all the different sporting contests that we played, either on the front yard or on the basketball court.
So how do your brother goes to Carolina, right? So that's got to help. But was Carolina always going to be your number one? Did you think about going? What other schools were coming after you when you were coming out of high school?
Well, I had a sister that played there for a year too until she had a medical situation that she couldn't play basketball anymore. So I was quite familiar with Carolina. I visited Virginia, Indiana, Notre Dame, and Wisconsin and Marquette, and it just came down to the fact that I felt most comfortable getting away from home because I was the last of seven and a little bit spoiled, and as my brothers and sisters would tell me, and I just needed to grow up, and so getting away from that and at 18 and going to North Carolina and learning from Coach Smith, I thought was one of my best decisions.
Weather's got to help, right? Like you don't have to deal with
those
winters anymore.
I am a Wisconsin guy, so.
Oh, you like the cold weather?
Oh man, yeah, I like getting out and snowshoeing and.
Really?
Oh yeah, I'm a little crazy like that.
Okay, well I'm just going to warn you, like when it snows here, which is hardly ever, but when it does, we get an inch. This whole, you've lived around the state long enough to see, like we're going to shut down.
Oh, sure. But the difference is in Wisconsin, we have these things called snowplows.
Oh, yeah.
And they're on the roads every 15 minutes. So, you know.
Have a shovel, you make the kids go outside, clear the driveway.
So you're driving on pavement. You guys don't have the equipment here, so I understand that. I wouldn't go out either.
Can you explain to us what the Carolina family's like in that Carolina tradition? Just you played at Carmichael, but being in Carmichael, being around Dean, being around, you had 2 Elite Eight runs. You came in off a championship, Dean's first championship, which was such a defining moment for him and the program. And just over the years, still, like I was saying, we had Carolina Family Weekend a few weeks ago. There are other great programs that pay honor and tradition to their heritage. UCLA is another great one, Kansas, Kentucky. But I don't feel like there's anything that comes close to Carolina. And I think it's because, correct me if I'm wrong, after you graduate, you guys still stick together, maybe even more than you did when you were in college. And that seems like a Dean Smith thing.
I don't know how to put it in words, to be honest with you. I've been asked this many times by on the radio, on TV, and just people around. And it's hard to put in words how Coach Smith's set up his program, ran his program, recruited the players into his program, and how we all became family. I don't know how to put that into words other than that was kind of his master plan and the way he wanted his program to run. So he recruited people that he thought would be good citizens and good basketball players. And I think that being said, those type of people really got along in the locker room and on the court and did amazing things. And I was fortunate to be one of them.
It's just always amazing, too, when you go back and look throughout the years, and every team has a different way about it. Every team has a different personality about it and a cast of characters. But the groups of guys that have come together over the years, and it works. It never fails. It just somehow works. It defies explanation other than to say it's a Dean thing, right?
Yeah, Coach Smith was well thought out and everything that he did. And I was never obviously in any of his meetings or recruiting meetings, but I can imagine that they checked the personality and character of the individual first, and then they moved on to the other things, how good of a student he was, and how well he played. But I think probably personality and character were atop the list.
I remember JB was talking about this with me a while back, and he was talking about how he wants guys that are going to be different than him. He wants different voices that are going to challenge him and sound different than him and think different than him and push each other in different ways, and that's healthy to have that dynamic. And Dean, we could talk about him as a great coach and a great figure, and he was. But his staff, he relied heavily on his staff too, right? So he gets a lot of credit, but especially Bill Guthridge. Coach Guthridge was tied to the hip with him, but all of his staff, even when Coach Williams was on staff, all the guys throughout the years, Dean always relied heavily on his entire staff to push the whole group forward.
No question. I think that that is something that gets overlooked a lot of times, how great Coach Guthridge was, Coach Fogler was, Coach Williams. Those are the gentlemen I played for, along with Coach Smith, and they each did their own thing, but they were well respected. And once we hit that court, we were not only playing for ourselves, but we were playing for all four of our coaching staff.
I think it's easy, probably, if you're putting a staff together, to find or look for guys that are going to be your troops on the ground, right? That are going to carry out and disseminate your message. I think that's important to some extent. Mm-hmm. But that also can go the other way, right? Where it's always one voice or one thought, and there never is any discernment going on about, hey, I know you're thinking about this, but maybe we need to try this in a different way. Oh, that's a great idea, but we're not coming about it at the right angle. And you can get yourself in trouble that way if you're not surrounding yourself with enough people who are going to say, you know what, I respect you enough to tell you I think you're wrong here, right? Mm-hmm. That's a tough thing to balance, I think, on a coaching staff.
Absolutely. But, respect has to be at all levels, and to understand somebody who can help you, you have to have the ultimate respect for their voice and their actions. And, obviously he chose his staff wisely, as any head coach does, and respects each and every individual as they would respect him.
What was your first job as a coach after your playing career ended? What was the first gig you got where you could say you were Coach Wolf?
So I was either an AAU coach, or I was my brother's assistant coach. I was my brother's assistant coach. That's what it was.
Okay.
So my brother coached at Kohler High School for a lot of years, and my first year was the lockout year, and I played about 3 practices, tore up my elbow, went home, and was trying to rehab. And so after practices, he would try to work me out and see if I could go again. And I started coaching with him, and we won a state championship that year.
So that's where it all started.
So that was where the flavor for coaching started, and from there, worked another 3 years with him, and then went on to the College of William & Mary and worked for Coach Shaver there.
Did you know you wanted to be a coach while whether you were in school or going through your MBA career, or was that something that this just kind of started? You got the bug?
I ran camps for about 20 years with my brother. Really enjoyed that, and that was during my playing career. And then, and then it just happened that I started working out with him as his assistant, because I needed to work out myself after practice. So, nothing planned, nothing that said my sophomore year, Coach Smith did this in a practice that said, okay, I'm gonna be a coach. No, nothing like that. I didn't have that moment, but I think the moment for me came was working to try to win games with my brother and develop the kids that had actually been coming to my basketball camps when they were 6, 7, 8 years old, that were now in high school. So I think that was the appreciation for development.
What was life like in the CBA back in the mid-2000s? What was life like? Glamorous, I'm sure. What was life back then?
Well, you can have a Christmas Day game in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and go to the Flying J truck stop.
Okay.
About 10 minutes outside the arena. Fuel up on on food, and get in the bus. And so when you leave Sioux Falls during the wintertime, you go up to Fargo and take a left to get to Bismarck.
Okay.
And we had to play Bismarck on the 26th of December.
That's a heck of a back-to-back.
So we start traveling, and this is Christmas night, and I'm sure the people could get on Google and check, but the wind chill, from what I understand, was about 50 below. So we get traveling, 30, 40 minutes into it, and I'm a little cold. I'm sitting in the front seat. The guys in the back are saying, Coach, it's a little cold. I was like, okay. So I asked the driver to turn on the heat. He turns on the heat. Another 30, 40 minutes goes by, and they're like, Coach, it's really cold. I was like, okay. So I go back, I checked, and it's blowing cold air. So
no joke.
So the bus driver, really can't do anything. So it's about 3.5 hours up to Fargo. So we do the best we can with what we have, and we get up to Fargo, and we stop at another truck stop because there's not a lot open on Christmas night.
Naturally.
Yeah. So, and I buy every blanket I could, every warm thing I could, and because the bus driver had said his defrost was working, so that was the only heater that we had.
That's what I cared about, yeah.
So that's why I bought everything I did. Then we drove the next 3.5 hours to Bismarck and got in exceptionally early in the morning, probably 4 o'clock in the morning, and I noticed that we had ice inside the windows, and at the end,
Joe, you're kidding.
My guys had taken the blankets and huddled together. And you know how you have 2 seats and 2 seats in a bus? Well, there were 2 seats and 2 seats, and you could just see mounds of blankets over it. Because if you opened up your blanket to the air, you were getting hit with an Arctic blast. I mean, it was that cold.
Oh my gosh!
So then I just told the guys we're not obviously doing shoot around. We're going to take long showers, and I think we proceeded to get beat by Dave Yeager and. By about 35 points or something. So, I mean, it was not.
And it seemed probably trivial, right? Like, you're just glad to be warm and somewhere safe.
It was just one of those stories that you get from the old CBA.
Oh gosh, yeah. Take us back too, because you were in the phase in the D League when it became the D League, when it went from NBDL, which was 01, I think it came into existence, to NBA DL. So. What was that like? Was it actually a jump up? Did it feel? I mean, it felt, I think, to the outside probably more credible because it had the NBA moniker attached to it, but it was still very loosely tied to the NBA. And the idea now of us being your parents' squad, I mean, that didn't exist, for the most part 15 years ago. So was it a step up compared to the CBA? What was the D League like back then?
Well, the CBA, when that happened, there were 4 teams from the old CBA that came into the D League at that point. And that's when I started to coach in Colorado for the 14ers, and so a lot of those 4 teams had the players come back and play on teams. So the competition was pretty much spot on. The facilities were a little bit better, a little bit of an upgrade. Travel was a little bit of an upgrade, but things were getting worked out, and obviously this was 15 years ago, and a lot of different things in terms of economy and everything else around the States has done a lot better. So it was a learning experience in a lot of different facets.
Gives you an appreciation though, right?
Absolutely. I mean, when I started out in the CBA, I was sweeping the floors and taping ankles and getting the clock set up for practice.
Crazy.
And now I coach.
Yeah, and you talk about facilities. Greensboro's got incredible facilities
at
the Coliseum, right? You walk into that field house, you're probably thinking, what on earth? Like, this can't be real right now.
My first thought was, this is better than, I played 11 years in the NBA, probably 4 or 5 years of my NBA experience. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a long time ago, but it's still unbelievable what they've done with that facility and how nice it is for the G League.
And I think it's interesting you look at where things are going, and they're still growing, and it's moving forward with the G League now. And you look at teams like Austin, the Raptors 905 squad, what they've done I think has been such a benchmark for a lot of teams to aspire to. OKC's done a pretty good job with their squad. A lot of teams have. Santa Cruz with the Warriors, they've been pretty good too. So when you look at those, Joe, you look at those programs, and I think they're programs. It's not by accident that they've had success and had call-ups and guys like Fred VanVleet to go from Raptors 905 and be one of the best rotation guys in the NBA last year. It's pretty incredible at a young age. So when you look at those programs, what's the common thread? What's going right for those teams to where you'd say that's why they're having that type of success, and it's helping not only the G League team, but it's feeding into success on the court for the NBA parent squad too.
Yeah, I think there's just a belief that development is where it's at, and the NBA has done a nice job with the G League and understanding that it's a valuable and viable platform for players to get better, whether it be coming out of college, free agents, or the parent club's players coming down.
And I think too, you have to treat it for what it is, right? To that point, like we've all seen guys who will get, sent down to the G League, and people refer to it as that, like sent down, as if it's some sort of, like there's something wrong with this guy. Why is he being? No, he's getting reps. He's getting meaningful game reps that he's not getting on the end of the bench right now. And you also see guys who don't treat it for the experience that it is either, and they just want to go and rack up a stat line and get shots up, and there's not the one-to-one, maybe rep you're looking for that would be helpful in your NBA career too, right? So that's a two-way street, but you've got to treat it for what it is, which is a tool to make your game better.
Yeah, I think that we've used the baseball terminology of being sent down, and I think it for the basketball it should be just sent to, because I run into that myself, saying that it should be sent to because they're going there to work on their game. The verbiage, I guess, we get from baseball, and it slides into our sport, but it should really be the player was sent to. Absolutely.
So you had, I think about 17 guys that were eventually called up when you were either in the CBA or the D League that go on to the NBA. All those guys are probably slightly different, but what do you remember about the ones that were success stories? What about their attitude, their mindset, their preparedness, their work ethic, all that stuff? What stood out about some of those guys?
Well, the thing is that those guys were rewarded by being picked up by an NBA team, which is what every player's dream was in the CBA and the D League. But there was also guys that were 8th, 9th, 10th men on my team that got valuable time and did grow into valuable players and made money overseas. So, it wasn't just about developing the guys to get NBA money. It was developing them so they could get recognized for a level of basketball where they could get paid more money. And, it's much different now. I mean, because of the connection with the NBA and what the NBA has done for the G League. But, a lot of us, the old minor league coaches, really enjoyed the fact that our players were getting a chance to play for more money.
When you look too at, I think Darius Bazley, I don't know if you're familiar with Darius Bazley and his story, but McDonald's All-American, was committed to Cuse for this coming season and backed out and said, I'm actually going to go to the G League. And so it's still up in the air of whether actually he's going to do that or not. There have been some conflicting reports that now he might just work out until his eligibility is up to be drafted next spring. But a situation like that raised a lot of eyebrows because we've heard a lot of people say, hey, there's an option other than college, right? There's an option where you could just work on your game and be a pro without going to the college route. I think a lot of people are maybe rooting to see if Darius could be that guinea pig, so to speak. Do you think the G League can ever be something that's separate than college, or does it need to occupy its own space? Can it be a college alternative, or does it need to be something that lives somewhere in between college basketball and the NBA game?
Yeah, I think that's a great thing about the sport of basketball right now is we're trying to figure that all out, and it's evolving. And I don't know where it goes, but I see only good things for what everybody is trying to accomplish with the development of players on and off the court. I think we're really hitting strides with in some areas with that, and I think it's refreshing.
And I think too, you speak about the joy you've gotten and the fulfillment personally and professionally from watching a guy grow and get better at his craft and work at that whole thing. I feel like the G League is now taking that space as being an outlet for that, because maybe I'm speaking too generally, but you were in the college game for quite some time, and college basketball has become such big business that you have to win now at any level in college basketball. And the development, I think there's some of it, but maybe not to the extent that it was even 10, 15, 20 years ago, because it's win now mode. If you're a mid-major school, you got to get 20 plus wins and get to the tournament. And so you don't maybe have the time to develop players on the end of your bench anymore. You just got to put a system in place and guys that can execute to go win. And so Yeah, I feel like that's kind of fallen by the wayside. But now the G League can be that place where you can take a slower approach with players to try to grow their game again.
Right, and that's the fascinating, exciting part is that for whatever reason, a player may not have received a proper look or I don't know what I'm searching for, but that's what the G League is there for, is to develop them, give them an opportunity, and hopefully, they want to be a professional basketball player, and a professional means that you're going to make money doing it. Hopefully you develop them so that they can make more money.
Not only is it Joe Wolf, Greensboro Swarm head coach, it's Joe Wolf, Charlotte Hornet employee, really for the third time, because you had a stint twice in Charlotte as a player for a couple of years, and you came back in '99, the lockout year, like you were talking about. So life's crazy sometimes. Welcome back to Charlotte. But what do you remember? You played all over the NBA. You were drafted 13th overall by the Clippers in '87. What do you remember, though, about being a Hornet? Because you were here really during the honeymoon days when the sellout streak's going on, beat the Celtics in the playoffs. What do you remember about that whole run back then?
I think it goes back to my teammates. We had a good bunch of guys. LJ, Larry Johnson, Zoe, I know they had their problems later on, but Chief was here, Muggsy, Dell, Scotty Burrell.
I love Scotty.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Scotty was one of my favorites.
Greg Sutton. I mean, you can just go down the list, and it was a bunch of good guys that played well together, and we had a lot of fun, and a lot of the fun was in winning games.
Rex has told us this story that J.R. Reed was once body slammed by Muggsy Bogues. Could you believe that? Do you think that's something Muggsy would have done or could have done in a locker room environment?
Muggsy's strong.
Really strong, right?
Yeah. I mean, people don't understand. I wouldn't put it past them.
That's I can believe that right there.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite things about Robert Parrish is, this is like a weird trivia fact, when he broke the minutes played record here in Charlotte, all-time NBA minutes played record for his career. He's no longer the recipient. I think he's 6th or 7th on the list. He's still really high. LeBron's going to crush that record to some place that'll never, ever go again, by the way. But he was given a grandfather clock on the court by George Shinn at the time, which still, to me, it just seems funny out of context now. It's like, would you ever it's like, might as well give somebody a rocking chair on the court, right? But he was given a grandfather clock, which almost seems slightly disrespectful, but it's kind of cutesy and funny. And folksy. It's just, I don't know. It's typical Hornets, I think, back in those days.
Yeah. Chief was not even one in a million. He was one in a billion. I mean, he kept you laughing, stoic, but then he hit you with a one-liner or a look and just have the whole room. I mean, he was tremendous. He was a tremendous teammate.
Joe, he would have been good in today's NBA. He was like the first big that was really doing a lot of that stuff, right? Like being a facilitator. He had a great shot too. He wasn't just back you up and put it in the basket.
No, he could run all day. Chief was always there. I always prided myself on trying to get to practice early. Chief was always there earlier than I was, always. And he could come into a gym and do a full split. I mean, he was just an amazing athlete.
If we were to fast forward, I don't know, say 5 years from now, because JB keeps using this term program, and I really like it. I'm starting to gravitate towards that because it's not a typical thing you hear attached to a pro sports franchise. But I think that's the mindset, right? Let's build a program and develop culture. So if I talk to you 5 years from now, what would Joe Wolf say would be some success for you professionally, the Swarm, and then the Hornets too? What would you look back on a few years from now?
You build it by possession by possession. Coach Smith taught us that every possession is key, and I've taken that over my coaching career to mean possessions in life and possessions on the basketball court. And today is a possession here with you on this podcast. So I'm taking this possession and trying to make myself better and enjoy it. And I hope I do that for the next 5 years so that I can say that it was 5 years well spent, and I competed in all those possessions, and I won some of them.
Well, I say this with all sincerity. Welcome back to Charlotte. Good luck this season up in Greensboro. and I'll be your little crash test dummy. We'll go back on the classic court. I'll try to hold you up at the elbow. You can back me up and take me to the rim. Okay?
That's fine with me.
Episode 15 of Courtside Seats in the books, and that's our new head coach for the Greensboro Swarm, Joe Wolf, former Hornet, longtime NBA big man, former Carolina great as well. So we welcome him back into the family, and we'll see what the Swarm are going to be as an extension, a direct extension of this Hornets squad. So I think fans need to get comfortable with the idea that players will be coming and going back and forth up to Greensboro at the Greensboro Coliseum complex at the Fieldhouse, and that'll be really fun to watch what Coach Wolf can put together. If you've missed any of our episodes of Courtside Seats, you can find it anywhere podcasts are legit. If you've missed any of our previous episodes of Courtside Seats, you can find us anywhere podcasts are available: Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. You can find us on YouTube, on our Charlotte Hornets YouTube channel. Just search my name, Kroger, Courtside Seats. You could search Charlotte Hornets, subscribe. All the podcasts are there. And also Apple Podcasts. Same thing. Search all those same terms. You'll find us there. Subscribe, leave a review, rate us up if you don't mind. And we'll be back next week right here. Another edition of Courtside Seats.